On Yom Revi, on Wednesday, the Python, whose name was Yitzchak, makes reference to two interesting psukim and the interpretation of the Medrash and the Rishonim and the Balei Tosfos on these verses. First, he turns to God and he says, look, we're in exile. We need to be redeemed. We want to be freed. Isn't the rule of a Jew who was sold as a slave to go out after 6 years? How many 6 years have gone by and was still enslaved? And then he says, perhaps, v'im nimkartem li eker, making reference to the pasuk that we were sold to eker, eker referring to idolaters, to the non-Jews who worship idols, and perhaps we're like them, who do not go out after 6 years. They have to serve la'olam until Yovel. So we say, well, there's a rule in the Torah that the relatives are obligated to redeem their relative from his imprisonment. And we turn to Hashem, Va'ata krovi v'goali. You are a karov. You are a redeemer. And it's a fascinating relationship that we have with Hashem, that he is our karov who must come to our rescue despite our having sold ourselves in slavery to the idolaters. And I was thinking that if we turn to Hashem, as the language of the verse says, Dodo ben Dodo, it says, Dodo o ben Dodo, if your uncle or your ben Dodo or any other relative must come to your rescue. So if he is our ultimate uncle, then we are all cousins. We are all krovim too. And perhaps Hashem looks down at us and he says, well, let's see if you act like relatives. You want me to come as the great Redeemer, the uncle who comes from afar without question to dispense his love without unconditionally. So let's see if you act like relatives. Not long ago, a member of my shul who was a consummate professional, consummate ben Torah, who every interaction in his professional life in the healthcare field is one of Kiddush Shem Shemayim, shared with me something that pained him. He had a non-Jewish coworker who had recently frequented one of the Orthodox enclaves in New York, and walking through the streets of Borough Park, Flatbush, or Williamsburg, or wherever it may be, obviously she noticed these large families and women pushing strollers with an army of children following behind her. And she was enthralled and she was impressed. And she came and told her coworker and says, it's amazing that these families, they're able to raise families and such beautiful children, so much attention and devotion to them. And her coworker, the member of the congregant of the shul, turns to her and he says, well, I'm not one of them. And, I'm not as religious as them. And she turned to him with a serious face and he says, now I know you're really Jewish. And he was a little bewildered. What do you mean? And she said, inevitably, whenever I share with Jews something about their co-religionists, inevitably they apologize. Why are you apologizing? You come from such a magnificent people with such a magnificent history, such wonderful people. What are you apologizing? And this fellow realized that so often, either because we feel inferior, we're just not living up, it's our way of defending ourselves, we're not like them, or sometimes we look with disdain and not with enough understanding and appreciation of others among us, that perhaps we don't comprehend fully their ways, their attitudes, their perspectives, but at the end of the day, we're all krovim. To finish on a positive note, years ago I had the opportunity to be in Eretz Yisrael during Operation Protective Edge, Tzok Eitan, in the terrible war during Gaza, where many tragedies took place. And I was privy to a conversation that took place between a reservist, who was generally a person who had finished his army service, who was summoned for duty in times of danger, who generally was married and with children, and he was talking to a soldier who was still fulfilling his basic service. And the reservist was saying, the truth is they should be calling up only the reservists, not the regular soldiers, because we already have families, we have children, and if God forbid something happens to us, then at least we leave a legacy. But you guys haven't even started life. And the other one turned to me and says, on the contrary, we have nothing to lose. You have a wife and children, they need you. What an amazing relationship. What amazing display of kurva, of closeness, of people who really feel for each other, sensitive for each other. The day we reach out to each other, whether with verbally or just in our hearts, to feel, to sense, and to be connected, and realize that we're all relatives, and to be a little more appreciative, a little more understanding, and more devoted, and not sheepishly apologize that we're not one of them. That's the day when the great uncle in the sky, Krovi V'Go Ali, will come and redeem us from all our tzaras.